So I just made lunch. But it's not exactly accurate to say that I made lunch because mostly I repurposed lunch from things that had been done before by people who have done nice things before. And then someone came and looked at the list of ingredients and said, "Oh, is it the same soup we had yesterday?" I said repurposed or something like that. And he said, "Oh yeah, same soup." But it's not the same soup. It's not even the same soup in terms of just reheating what was there. But it just in this moment, I'm thinking, because in the SAFE course that I'm facilitating, people are really looking at this quality of impermanence. The difference between gross impermanence and subtle impermanence. And, looking at that soup, regardless, even if it was exactly the soup we had yesterday, like untouched, with no vegetables added, no seasoning added, no water added, no whatever, it still would not be the same soup we had yesterday, right? But of course, there are the vegetables that were in the stir fry are also now in the soup. And then some broth is now in the soup, and some seasonings are now in the soup, and more water is now in the soup. That's all kind of gross change too, right? Even, had it been the exact same soup, I think that's still gross impermanence at work, right? This subtle impermanent business is even extremely more subtle. It's, I find it fascinating. I guess because I know it must exist and I cannot ascertain it with any of my senses. Actually, ascertain. They say that we apprehend. They say that we actually can, that the senses actually do pick up the very subtle momentary change. But my mind can't get it. So a few days ago, maybe in the middle of the week, we had a massive snowfall. Massive for September. Or was it even October already? Yeah, it was September. It was still September 27th. Normally we say, oh yes, the first snow comes around Halloween. That's the local marker. But the snow came a month and a few days before Halloween. Also kind of a massive, shocking change. My expectation was that we would have what we often have here, a beautiful long summer fading into fall, the flowers still clinging, the last of the marigolds hanging on to the last little bit of sunshine before the temperatures drop, right? No. Big snowfall. 2 inches? 2 inches. 4 inches? Some inches. Some inches. And did you know that in Montana they got 3 to 4 feet? 3 to 4 feet at the end of September. So the climate change part of change aside, who knows why it snowed so early? But again, my expectation that this fall would look like previous falls when the flowers hung on until maybe Halloween or later is just another aspect of my mind clinging to a sense of permanence and thinking things won't change. So I just bring it to mind because the change of the season is always a really good time for me to be reflecting on impermanence. I have brought up before these meditations that Arya Asanga gave for how to really get our mind accustomed to the truth of impermanence and how things are changing moment by moment. He suggests that we meditate, for example, on our own body and how that has changed from the time that we were small to the time that we're teenagers to the time that we're wherever we are now to the time that we're quite old. It's been interesting lately. I've had an opportunity to lay eyes on some people over the last few months that I haven't seen in years, like 20 years. Change. When they look at me, do I look the same? I think I do. But of course I don't. I would wonder if people would even recognize me if they hadn't seen me in 20 years. or 30 years. So that's one of the meditations that Arya Sangha advises. He advises that you think about cities. Think about the town you grew up in. Think about what it looked like when you were 5 and 6 and walked to kindergarten for the first time, if that was your situation, and what it looks like today. Changing moment by moment by moment by moment by moment to something that's quite different. To look at things like lunch, that is now getting colder and colder and colder the longer I talk. Changing moment by moment by moment by moment. And if we don't probably stop soon, the mushroom soup might congeal a little bit. All of that sets us up so that, for a few things. One is, I think everybody in this room is quite intent on the idea that the moment death arrives, that we will get it together, realize we're dying, and start practicing like crazy so that we're propelling ourselves into a fortunate rebirth. But as long as I am shocked when the snow falls, I am not ready to die. That's point number one. Point number two is realizing, as the Buddha said so clearly, the more we can let go of our clinging to things as they have been, or as we think they are, permanent and unchanging, the less suffering we'll have on a day-to-day basis. And so, before lunch gets any colder and changes any further and becomes tomorrow's lunch in some other form, I'll stop. But I don't know, fall's a good time to think about impermanence because things are changing.